Welcome, friend, to the special recap edition of the Influential Personal Brand Podcast. Man, did we need to hear from John OLeary right now?
Seriously, he's so awesome. He's just the best guy.
I mean, his attitude, his mindset, if you haven't listened to
His
the
story.
episode, his story is incredible. We've been friends for years. One of the most successful speakers in the world, truly, and just an amazing guy. But to hear his story, it's like you can't. We were talking to him about how he's built his career and everything, but you can't. His career is built on gratitude and love. Like, his secret is not some business process or something. And that was my first big takeaway. And I had never heard him say this, but he said, there is an ROI on love. And when he was telling the story about loving on the AV guys that are like backstage at a keynote that, nobody talks to. And if they do talk to him, it's like, hey, get this done for me, or get this put in, or, why doesn't this work, or whatever. And having those guys refer him, I just like, that is the epitome of him. And I thought that was a good reminder for all of us to go, especially now when things are difficult and things are hard. Like, you're never too busy to love on people. You're never too broke to love on people. You're never too important to love on people. And the world is starving for that right now. And I teared up in the interview. Like, I just needed it so badly. He's so amazing.
And you're a big softie.
And I am a softie. It's true. It's true.
I mean, my take on John, like outside of the interview, is that anyone who can capture the heart of a 3-year-old as an inspirational speaker has got my vote. Our oldest child, Jasper, talks about John OLeary every day.
Every day.
And I don't mean some days. Every single day. He said, Daddy, friend, Mr. John. I want to watch the video, Daddy's friend, Mr. John. And to me, there's something about like, what is it about him that has captured this curiosity in even a 3-year-old? And there is this uniqueness about John. So I really do hope you watch the interview. But actually, it's very rare that I take notes, but I have a lot of notes.
Look at you, note taking.
I know it's very rare. But there were just like so many good one-liners and nuggets. And just like you said, it's really an era of needing messages like this. And this is kind of in line with what you just said. It wasn't my first point. My points are kind of out of order because I had so many. But I loved this. And he said, there is no such thing as a little job.
Mm-hmm.
And I love that. And, it's like we very much have the attitude of it doesn't matter if you're the CEO, the business owner, the entrepreneur, you are also the trash taker, the cleaner, the window washer. It's like, at what point do you think that you have elevated above the jobs that need to be done? And I just really believe that a servant's heart and a true leader never rises above that. If there is trash on the floor, you pick it up, right? If there is something that needs to be cleaned, you do it. There is never this concept of rising above. And I loved it. He talked about this story about Lavelle, the janitor.
Oh my gosh.
That was the janitor in his hospital room when he was in the hospital bed for 6 months
fighting for his life.
He had this horrific accident. Yeah, truly fighting for his life. And he said, I believe that Lavelle saved my life many times because I was so susceptible to the tiny viruses. A little cold or anything could have been what ended his life. And he said, but because Lavelle was in there cleaning his room and making it sanitary every day, that was a part of what saved his life. And
there's no little jobs.
There's no I'm just like even reading this and it's like, I'm going to have to like hold the tears back because he said today in the midst of COVID-19, he said, there has never been a greater reminder in our country of how every job matters.
Yes.
Like
the grocery store, when he said
the delivery trucks,
water, electricity, internet. I mean, imagine if we didn't have internet right now. Like, that would be a big deal.
That would be interesting.
That would be a big deal.
Or just people who are willing to get up and go to the grocery stores and keep those open, and people who are willing to get up and, put their lives at risk to keep the coffee shop open or the restaurants open.
It's like, of course, the nurses, right, too. Of course, the doctors. Of course, the doctors.
Thank
and
gosh for our
and
first responders.
and all the people who, you just never realize, like, what I mean, how critical that just delivering, getting mail delivered is like keeping the country running, being
Yeah.
able to get things at your house. The person who picks up a side job, running to the grocery store to grab groceries, that an elderly person can get groceries delivered to their house, like, amazing.
So many things. I just loved that in the midst of this. And then just also talking about that story of Lavelle, of just putting a name and a face too. It's like some people may see it as a janitor. He said, no, this man kept me alive. Just such a powerful perspective.
It was powerful, yeah, and kind of playing off of what you just said, I think when he was actually telling the story of how they got started, and when he went out and started speaking, and it was totally by accident, and then he ended up going, okay, this is our full-time thing. We have to make it work, and we have to do whatever it takes. And I feel like you and I have been there in our relationship, like with our business, where
Both
it's like
businesses. Yeah.
both times we didn't have a choice. Like we had to make it work.
I
And
guess, but we did have a choice. We chose to make it work.
yeah, well, we chose to do whatever it took to make it work. Like, you always have a choice.
But yes, yeah.
You can take a safer route, but to that point of, like, there's no small jobs. I remember a couple weeks ago, um, this is a little sort of side note, but um, there was chaos in our house, and there's chaos every once in a while because we have two little kids and everything.
Like every day.
Uh-huh. And I was overwhelmed, and I just scooted out of the room, like, and I just went upstairs. And then later that morning, AJ was like, I could tell she was upset, and not upset, but just like, she was quiet. And I was, she kind of brought up, like, hey, you bailed on me. And I felt so bad in that moment, because it's like, you have to be willing to dig the ditches. Like, you got to do the work of digging the ditches. And whether it's your spouse or your business partner or the people next to you, everybody has to be willing to dig the ditches together. And I
Mm.
think, people use that analogy, like who you're going to be in the foxhole with in a fight, which I think is, inspiring. And if you're a war person or whatever, but the reality is, for most of us, the daily life isn't a foxhole. It's not a matter of life and death, but it is a matter of digging ditches.
Yeah.
It's a matter of who's doing the work, and are you staying in the fight? Are you staying in the battle? And just doing the work it takes to make it work. And so I took that was one of my big takeaways, was when he was talking about doing whatever it takes to make it work, which also ties to what you were saying about there is no small job, and
Yeah.
you got to hang in there, and you got to dig the dishes.
And just appreciate, like, don't rise above the small jobs. Like, I love that. So yeah, so I guess that would be my first point. I'll claim that as my first point. My second point, which I think is kind of connected to that a little bit, but I just thought it was worthwhile sharing, is don't be so, I had to read this so I get it right. Don't be so arrogant to think you should get paid in year one.
Wow.
I was like, bam, right
Boom.
right there. Because I think so many people are like, what should I charge? What should I charge? And like part of like what we do at Brand Builders Group is helping people set their pricing
That's
schedules and their
right.
fee schedules.
It's
And
a hard question.
it's a really hard question, but I love too the attitude of like if you really went back and you said, okay, well, how did we get started and what did we do? It's like, okay, well, we spoke a lot for free.
Yep.
A lot. Like I mean, for 8 years I was still speaking for free. Like I was still getting paid to speak, but I was still speaking for free. And
Yeah.
it's like, remember,
I still speak for free at certain events. Like,
yeah,
I
like,
mean, still to this
but
day,
it's like really before your speaking career took off, it's like you spoke over 300 times
300
for
times.
free. And it's like that very first year that we really launched our first business, I spoke something like 220 times for free that year
Can I
with all.
tell him? Can we tell him how much you made the first
Oh
year
God.
we had
Sure.
this is not in Brand Builders Group. You're making even less in Brand Builders Group.
Everyone gets paid before me.
Yes,
Oh.
but in our first year in business, you made, like,
In our first
in
business,
our first business,
twenty-four thousand five
twenty-four
hundred
thousand
dollars
$24,500.
rolling in it.
That, and then, by the end of our, I mean, a few years
Yeah.
later, you were making that every month. And then, a few years later, you're making that more like every week.
Yeah. I
Um,
mean, it's really is amazing. And I think that's, not to like broadcast, what we make or anything, but in year one, I was making $24,500. I was speaking for free a lot,
a
like
ton.
every day. But then it was by year 10, yeah, I mean, it was more like I was making that
24,000
every
a
a
week.
week. I
Hmm.
was making that a week.
And to put things back in context, okay, so brand builders were now about a couple
2
of years
years,
into the business.
almost 2 years.
So year one, you made $600.
I think it was technically, I think I made 13,000.
Oh yeah, that for delivery work, because you assisted on some delivery
Yeah.
work. But
But
AJ's the
yeah,
CEO of Brand Builders Group, and she gets paid last. She only
yeah,
gets paid if there's anything like left over, and it's been virtually zeroed now, for a
not
couple years.
virtually. It is zero.
Zero, other than the delivery work, the client facing
If
work
I do
that
some
if you
client
step in and
facing,
do some of that.
but I thought that was so important, and I guess it hit me because we get asked that so much, and I think 12 years later into our professional lives and personal lives, it's we forget that the reality is when we started speaking, we didn't charge.
Hmm.
We said yes to everything, and that's so much of what John was saying. He said my business grew because I said yes. I just said yes. He said we were yes led and mission driven. And he said, and don't be so arrogant to think that you should get paid the first time you do it or the first year, because we did it for years. We still do it. Like we are, after the sale of an eight-figure business and all the stuff that we've done, it's like we still don't get paid.
And we're digging
We dig it,
ditches right now.
yeah.
We're brand builders, even though the clients are doing well, and our team, like we've been able to get our team up to good levels of pay. Um,
But I just loved what he said. There's like this attitude of people get entitled of like,
yes,
I deserve to make this money. My time is worth this. Says who? Says who?
yeah,
And I just love his attitude of like, don't be so
you're
arrogant to
never
think.
above doing that work. Yeah,
Yeah, I love that. I just thought it was such a good reminder of when you're asking yourself, what should I get paid and what should I charge? Maybe the question is like, well, just how many times can I do this before someone says, can I pay you?
serve.
Just really, really good. I love
Great.
that.
Gosh, that's such a great reminder. Yeah, it's, again, just it's so powerful to hear this inspiration. And here's the thing, you may be there right now, right? Like
Mhm.
maybe you were a speaker, or you were an employee, or you were someone making a lot of money, and all of a sudden, boom, COVID hits, some crazy things happens in China with a bat, and here we go. Like all of us have to just do whatever it takes, and
Yeah.
and you rebuild by serving. Figure out a new problem and start serving it and start solving it and start helping, and don't be above it. And then the money always follows. Like the money will come back around.
Mhm.
Way more important than the money, and this is what he's all about, and this is my third takeaway, was just being reminded of how much life is a miracle.
Mm. Mm. Yeah.
Of
Towards the end.
Towards
Yeah.
the end, and he was just talking about,
Yeah. That was so good.
um like there's like a 1 in 400 trillion chance, or whatever it is, of your DNA coming together the way that it is. um and just like the fact that you're here, and then talking to somebody like John, who's so grateful for everything, and go, what, imagine if you didn't have your hands, right? Like imagine if you didn't have your hands, or if you didn't have your eyesight, or if you didn't have, like, there's so many people that are living with a lot of fear right now because their immune system is really weak, and it's really dangerous time for the vast majority of us, and perhaps you. We have so much to be grateful for. It's so beautiful that we're even here.
Mm.
We as crazy as the current situation is of the quarantined world, it's also pretty incredible how we're able to connect and do business virtually, and have our basic needs met, and food delivered to our house. And there's a if there was ever a time in history to have this, it would be right now. Like this has to have been the easiest time, the most medically advanced to ever have something like this. And it's all about that perspective. I remember seeing something on Instagram about COVID where it said, your grandparents were called to war. You're being called to sit on the couch.